Welcome to the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. I'm your host, Corey. Find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and Podserve, just to name a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where independent new authors come first. I'm looking at an inspiring new book that chronicles the author and his wife's journey to save their marriage. It's written by Michael Stoddard, and it's titled Love Over a Fruit Bowl. Michael is sitting here with me now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. Michael, welcome to the show. I appreciate you being here today.
Great, thank you. Glad to be here.
Michael, can you tell me all about Love Over a Fruit Bowl?
Well, this is a story that my wife and I had gone through over the years. We had a pretty amazing story on how our marriage was really rescued. We've shared this story with many couples who have needed some encouragement over the years, and we figured it was finally time to put it into a book form. And so it's available and ready to help those who might need a little encouragement in their marriage.
So you wrote this primarily then for couples who might be struggling in their marriage?
Yeah, I think so. It certainly would help those who are struggling, but those who might need some encouragement too. Nobody has a marriage where there aren't a few problems here and there.
So what inspired you? What was that spark that made you sit down and start this book?
I think just seeing how when we have shared our stories with individual couples, we really saw the difference that it was making in their lives, and we saw how it helped them so much that we figured, well, we better put this into something that we can just hand out. It's a fairly long story to tell on a one-on-one situation, so this made it a little bit easier to be able to help encourage couples along the way of this thing called marriage.
Michael, what does your writing background look like? Are you experienced in this kind of thing?
This is my first book. I grew up in the business community. I've been a person who's done different financial writings over the years for financial reporting and so forth, but this is my first attempt at a book. So this is the first published book I've had.
Being your first one, was this a long process for you overall, the writing and publishing and everything?
Well, I started this really talks about a story that happened or a situation that happened to us many years ago, probably about 25 years ago. And probably about 15 years ago, I started to write it down. And so I've worked on it over the years, and finally it was like, I need to figure out how to get this thing published. And so then once I worked with Christian Faith Publishing, they really helped make it easy for me. I didn't know anything about the process of publishing, and they really walked me through every step of it. So the process itself was not that hard.
When you look ahead, do you see yourself writing another, do you think?
I think so. I think there's a number of topics that I'd like to write on, and so this is a good start for me, but I could see another book or two in the future.
Is there anything you would do differently next time?
I don't think so. I think I would take a little less time to write it. I think I could produce one faster this time. This one was a long time in the works and put a lot into it. I think just understanding the process would help me to do it a little quicker the next time around.
Was the writing an easy process for you, would you say, or did you hit stumbling blocks from time to time, like writer's block and things like that?
No, there wasn't really writer's block. There was a few times where I took the story at different angles, different point of view, and I really came back and just had to write it really as my point of view. So obviously the story chronicles the journey that my wife and I took, not only to meet each other, but also as we went through our marriage and how we finally refocused our marriage through some really tough times. And so I had written it through different viewpoints, and I finally came back and said, really, this is my story. I need to write it from my standpoint. There may be a time, too, when my wife would write her standpoint of the book or from her viewpoint, which it would come out the same, but it would be through a different set of eyes, which would be really interesting.
We have a lot of authors listening to us who are just starting out. Michael, do you have any advice that you could throw out there for them?
I would say follow your heart. Write down the story that you think is most important. Work with a good publisher to get this thing produced. And take it one step at a time. Don't force it. You can't get it all done at once, so take your time and do it right.
Again, this book is titled Love Over a Fruit Bowl. It's written by Michael Stoddard, published by Christian Faith Publishing, and available pretty much everywhere: Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, and traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Michael, thank you again for coming on the show. It's been wonderful talking with you.
Great to talk to you as well. Thank you.
No Pain, No Gain. That's Shannon Collins' new book, and it challenges believers to trust God's purpose through life's hardest tests. Shannon is sitting down here with me at the show, and we're going to talk all about it. Shannon, welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
Shannon, can you tell me what you've written about in No Pain, No Gain?
No Pain, No Gain is about the test that a Christian must go through to get to the purpose or the plan that God has for you. It's about submitting to God even when it doesn't feel good, and trusting Him no matter what it feels like, knowing that we walk by faith and not by sight.
Shannon, what kinds of readers do you think this would connect with the most?
Well, I think that it should grab everybody's attention because, we all go through pain. Nobody's exempt from it. We all hurt. We all lose loved ones. We all get sick. And so I think it should touch the hearts of all people.
What was your inspiration behind this? What gave you that idea to write it?
God inspired me to write the book, but I came across so many people that were going through the things that I went through. And, I was moved with compassion, and I just, began to pray to God and ask God to use me to help someone and allow me to, share my testimony and allow me to just tell Him that if you just hold on to God, look to Him, He'll bring you through. He'll bring you through and He'll give you a testimony to help somebody else along the way.
When it comes to writing and publishing and all of that, Shannon, are you new to this or do you have some experience in it?
No, I'm new. I'm new all the way. But, it's been an enjoyable time. I've learned so much through this. I have. It was some hard times, but it was some exciting times. And so this was very new to me.
When you started working with your publisher, Christian Faith, Shannon, what did you find to be the most challenging part about the publishing process for you?
You know what? They were very understanding and very patient with me. Anytime I had a question or anything, or I would email them, and they would get right back in touch with me. And I told them, I said, please be patient with me because this is new. They said, we realize that, and we are, and it's going to be okay. We're going to lead you through this whole process. And they did. They made me realize that this thing's going to happen because they're going to stand behind me, and see me through it.
And then that day came and it finally did happen. You got the first copy in and you're holding No Pain, No Gain in your hands for the first time, Shannon. What was that moment like for you?
Oh, my gosh. I had to look at that book and I said, look at God. Because it's truly His doing, and it was marvelous in my eyes. I thought nobody but God could do this.
So overall, was this a long process for you, the writing and publishing and everything?
Well, as you know, it's a short story. It's a 26 pages, but it has a lot of meaning behind it. I always tell everybody it's a short story with a big message talking about a great big God who still does miracles.
So looking down the road, do you see yourself writing and publishing more, do you think?
I always tell everybody, when it comes to God, you just better be ready because you never know what He's going to do next. Our job is just to always have an expectation because we serve a great big God who does great things.
And so now you have your work finally out there. What would you say is the most rewarding aspect of this all for you?
Just getting the feedback of it helping people. Bringing God glory and helping people. It's great to get money from, books and stuff. It's great. But you know what the biggest reward is? Knowing that God is getting the glory and someone else is getting help.
I love that. Well, Shannon, we have a lot of aspiring authors listening to us right now. Do you maybe have some advice that you could offer to them?
What I would tell everyone is if God put it in your heart, just do it. Trust the process. If He's gave it to you, He's going to see you through it. Just keep on going till it's finished because somebody needs to know your testimony. Somebody needs to know that God is able to do anything but fail. Trust Him.
This book is titled No Pain, No Gain. It's written by Shannon Collins, and it's published by Christian Faith Publishing. Get it at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, or right down the street at your local bookshop. Shannon, it's been great talking with you today. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for the invitation. God bless you.
The assassination of John F. Kennedy is something that has fascinated so many of us for so many decades. And that's the subject of Marc Birnbaum's new book, JFK, Cold War Assassination. Marc is right here with me now at the show, and we're going to talk all about it. Marc, welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Hi, Corey. Thank you for calling and including me. I appreciate it.
Marc, I'm excited to learn about JFK, Cold War Assassination. Can you tell me all about this?
Well, it tells a tragic story that is still only partially understood. President John F. Kennedy's assassination of November 22nd, 1963, ended a brilliantly lived life and that was prematurely cut short. I was a high school sophomore back then, in 1963, and I just remember vividly how I learned about the president's death and how emotional I was, along with family, classmates, friends, and teachers. Interestingly, the tragedy was generational, as my parents compared the news to Pearl Harbor, December 7th, 1941, and my children compared it to 9/11, September 11th, 2001. And here we are today, 60-plus years later, and the official story of the Warren Commission, that a lone lunatic named Lee Harvey Oswald fired 3 shots and there was no conspiracy. That official history is disbelieved by 60% of Americans. In 1976, the House Select Committee on Assassinations was established by Congress to find the truth as the facts of hidden files were slowly being revealed. But by 1992, enough had been found to take the next steps, and Congress went further with the President John F. Kennedy's Assassination Records Collection Act of 1992. And they ordered the organization of the facts they had toward the release of files beginning October of 2017, which wasn't that long ago, but it was a 25-year wait. And as the story began to be told, there are still some 35,000 documents left to be organized as they sit currently in the National Archives. And this book reveals my perspective based on some of what has been revealed.
Would you say you wrote this for history buffs or those who are really into the JFK assassination?
Both. I wrote it for me primarily because I wanted to structure. I was very interested in finding the information, and I haven't found it all yet. But it was something that I lived through and I remember vividly, and it's something that I didn't want to just let go by as the information trickles out.
So what was that spark? What made you say, hey, I got to write this book?
In the 20th century, so soon after World War II, assassinations weren't supposed to happen. He was young. He was the second youngest American president in history, and it touched my soul. 43 years old when inaugurated in 1961, and the only younger president was Teddy Roosevelt at 42. John Kennedy was 43. JFK had a young wife and 2 young children. He was a war hero, only president ever to be awarded the Purple Heart for heroism, with the sinking of the PT-109 and his heroic efforts to save his crew. You know, there was an attachment, and I didn't, just thinking about it as I'm thinking about it, there was a real line of demarcation in 1960, plus or minus a couple of years when we were kids, when I was a kid. And that is the world went from black and white to color. And so you can relate it back to The Wizard of Oz and the black and white and then color all in the middle. But it really, when you close your eyes, and I think about Eisenhower administration through the 50s, he was in black and white. He was an old man. Kennedy was really very vibrant with his family and his kids. He was a widely admired leader, and his assassination stirred deep emotions. Those of us who remember the assassination will never forget it. And interest remains, with 40,000 books on the assassination having been published to date.
Oh, wow.
That's 40,000. You know, within each book, there's how many they sell, but 40,000 individual titles have been published on the Kennedy assassination. So there's a lot of interest out there.
Well, definitely an important book. Again, this is titled JFK, Cold War Assassination. It's written by Marc Birnbaum and published by Newman Springs Publishing. Pick it up at places like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, and traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Marc, it's been great talking with you tonight. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Corey, thank you very much for setting this up. I really appreciate it. And to all those writers out there, just keep plugging.
Joining me right now here at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable is author Bruce Nelms. Bruce, welcome to the show. I appreciate you being here today.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
Bruce, I'm excited. You have a new book out titled Decoding Daniel, a study of historical perspective and meaning. Can you tell me what you've written about here?
The book is about, we developed a study guide with the book of Daniel. There's a lot of information in the book of Daniel that as we studied it, we noticed that there's many places that you needed to go other than the book of Daniel to fully understand what Daniel was being shown. So what we did was we took Daniel and Revelation and world history, and we comprised this book and made it a study guide for those that want to find out and have a deeper understanding of the book of Daniel. And if you take Revelation and Daniel and you put those together with world history, it gives you a really great picture of what God had allowed Daniel to see and the knowledge that he gave him and how it played out throughout world history.
So what gave you that inspiration, that idea to write this?
We were several of the men, we were studying, and there were a lot of things that as you go through and you really dig into it, you see that some of the things we'd never heard before, and as far as the history and the things that you heard, Daniel is a lot of figurative language. So when you ask yourself, what did Daniel see and what did it really mean? Some of the answers that I came up with were things that people may have never heard before. And then when you combine that with the history of it, you see exactly what he was being told. So in order to take all of that and make it easy, because a lot of times when I read or something like that, I have to go back and reference, previous chapters or pages and try to pull out and remember what was going on. So what I did was try to make it very simple for somebody that wants to understand the book of Daniel by putting all of that together for them to just be able to read through and get the complete context. And so it started out with us, the group of men that I study with. There were a lot of things that we really hadn't heard before or contemplated. And when we did that, I thought it was just going to be a great idea to put it together to make it easier for someone else to study and learn the things that we had learned.
What does your writing background look like, Bruce? Do you have experience doing this kind of thing?
I don't. This is the very first book that I've ever written. It was a labor of love, and it was important enough for me to want to do it. So this is the very first book that I've ever written.
Wow, being your first one, was this a long journey you were on overall then, the writing and publishing and everything?
Yes. After the study and trying to get everything together, just gathering all the information and putting it together and going through the process was a little more than 2 years. And I've learned a lot about the process during that time frame, but it did take a lot of work to get there. But again, it was a labor of love. So that 2 years went pretty fast in most cases.
And you chose a great publisher, Christian Faith Publishing. Bruce, what would you say was the most challenging part for you about that publishing process?
I think the editing part of it. Born and raised in Southwest Louisiana, I have a tendency to write like I speak. And I think a lot of people do that. But when it comes to the proper grammar in English, it took a little bit for the editors to help me get it all straightened out. And Christian Faith did a great job in getting me there.
When you look down the road, Bruce, do you see yourself writing and publishing more, do you think?
I do. I have a couple of topics that I would like to do. As I talked about Daniel and needing Revelation as a companion to study Daniel, I think one of the next things I'll look at is writing a book to help people understand Revelation and what's being taught there. Then I've also looked at maybe the life and labors of the Apostle Paul, all the things he went through with the travels and the challenges and, his background, and to give some of the history, what was going on at the time when he was going to these places on his missionary journey.
Well, it sounds to me like a lot of readers are going to be blessed in the pages of this book. Again, it's titled Decoding Daniel, a study of historical perspective and meaning. It's written by Bruce Nelms and published by Christian Faith Publishing. Pick it up at places like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, and traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Bruce, it's been great learning about your work. Thank you again for coming on the show.
Thank you so much. Have a blessed evening.
Carlos, the Colorblind Chameleon. Well, that's the new book written by Corey and Ashley Lee. We'll be talking all about it right now here at the show. Corey and Ashley are right here with me. Corey, Ashley, thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Can you tell me all about Carlos, the Colorblind Chameleon? What are readers going to be getting into here?
Yeah, so it's a children's book. It is about Carlos, the colorblind chameleon. And it's a book about, finding the good qualities and what makes you different and kind of using those as your strengths and finding out who you are.
So it's a children's book. Would you say this is for younger children, older children, or maybe children of all ages?
I think children of all ages, definitely older kids for actually reading it. Our kids are 1, 5, and 7, and they would have trouble reading it. But, it's a good story. They like to hear the story, so that's always good. I used to be a teacher, and I think the kids in my class would have enjoyed it.
What was that inspiration, that motivation that made you say, hey, we got to write this book?
Well, my husband, Corey, is colorblind, and so his least favorite game, whenever anyone finds out he's colorblind, they say, what color is this? What color is this? And he doesn't like it. But I've always been really interested in it, and he'll do it for me. And so we just always talked about it, and he had the idea. He wanted to write the book, and I love writing, and so that's how it started.
Do you have a lot of experience writing and publishing?
No. I was a teacher, and I have a journalism degree, and I just enjoy writing. But no, I've never, and neither has he, written anything for other people to read.
Once you started off on this, was this a long journey overall, the writing and the publishing and all that?
Oh, yeah. It was actually way longer than I thought. I thought it would be really different. It took quite a while. I think overall, it took us about 2 years to write it. Of course, I got pregnant during the process with our youngest, and so I was really tired. But it was definitely a lot.
Once you started working with your publisher, Christian Faith, what was the most challenging part about that end of things for you?
Ooh, I don't know. They were great. They were really nice and helpful. And I think really the most challenging part for me was I just wanted it to be perfect. And me and Corey are really different in that way, where he's like, you did it. Like, it's good. Go for it. And I'm like, well, no, now I want to change this and I want to change this. And so it was really good working together, because he'd be like, no, send it. It's fine. And I think that was my biggest challenge. What about you, Ben?
I would say I agree.
I could only imagine that moment whenever the first copy came in and you guys were holding it for the first time. What was that moment like for you?
Oh, it was amazing. It felt like another one of our kids came to life.
Looking down the road, do you think you'll be doing this again? Do you think you got some more books in you?
I don't know. We've definitely talked about it. I would love to write some more. What do you think?
We definitely have some ideas, but we just don't know if we have the time. Like, we realize how much time that we invested in it, and the ideas are there. Just the time with the kids and stuff, like it's a challenge for sure.
Maybe when they're older.
Yeah.
Corey, Ashley, I'd love to hear what you both find to be the most rewarding aspect of having this out there for you.
I think for me, the most rewarding is just, I've always wanted to write a book, and I did it. It's one of those things that it's been like a dream for me, and I feel like I've finally accomplished it, and that feels really good.
For me, I would say just letting other kids know that, hey, it's all right to be a little different. It's okay. As long as, just a couple kids got to understand it's okay. Trust me, because I used to try to act like I wasn't. Okay, to be honest, I still kind of act like I'm not. Like, I do my best. I try to memorize my clothes and different things. And it's just because I don't want to talk about it, because they all play the same game with me of what color is that? And then they tell me I'm wrong. So I get trying to hide it. And it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad quality. Just people are going to bug you about it a lot.
What a great book. Again, it's titled Carlos, the Colorblind Chameleon. It's written by Corey and Ashley Lee, published by Christian Faith Publishing. You can pick it up at places like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, or right down the street at your local bookshop. Corey, Ashley, it's been great to talk with you tonight. Thanks again for coming on the show.
Hey, thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate your time. We really do. Thank you for reaching out and conversating with us, and we appreciate it.
Joining me again here at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable is author Wiley Livingston Jr., MD. Wiley, welcome back. Thanks for being here again.
Oh, it's a delight. Nice to hear you.
Wiley, the audiobook edition of your book, God's Human Biology, just came out. Can you tell me all about it?
Sure. So basically, the book, both the written book and the audiobook, describe the most dazzlingly complex machine in the universe, and that is you. It's just absolutely amazing, all of the biochemical and organ systems that coalesce and mesh perfectly. And not only is that so incredibly complex, but it says a lot about the creator. There has to be an architect for something this amazing.
And what sorts of readers or audiobook listeners did you have in mind for it?
Anyone's a target reader, anyone who's interested in health and, how the body works. But my main target audience would be the student who perhaps is being told that there is no creator, that science disproves that. And this book is actually to demonstrate that the reverse is true. Science actually has to prove there's a creator. Otherwise, you can't have anything this complex.
What was that spark, Wiley, that made you say, hey, I got to write this book?
It just kind of wrote itself. I just sat down one day, and I'm still a practicing physician. So I'm working 12, 14-hour days, so I don't have a lot of time. But I just started writing chapters, and eventually it turned into a book, and they were kind enough to publish it for me.
What does your writing background look like? Do you have experience doing this kind of thing?
I have some other published things. Some of them are technical science papers. I've got a chapter in a book on endocarditis, and I've got a few non-book published articles. But this is the first time I've had a book actually published.
Overall, was this a long process for you? The writing, publishing, the audiobook production, everything?
About 6 months. And I look back on it and say, when did I have the time to do it? But really every spare moment I was researching it and writing it. And a lot of it I didn't have to research too much. A lot of it is actual patient stories, examples from history, and then just, like I say, it wrote itself.
Once you started that publishing process, what was the most challenging part of that for you?
Actually, the most challenging part of it has been the marketing. Writing the book actually wasn't that hard.
And so once it was finally a real thing and you're holding God's Human Biology in your hands for the first time, Wiley, what was that like for you?
I liken it back to what happened with George McFly, Back to the Future. At the very end of that movie, he opens a box and there's his books that he's just written and had published. His kids are crowding around. I think my children were more excited than I was about it.
And we're talking about the audiobook edition. So when you heard your own book being read back to you, Wiley, what was that like?
Oh, that was really strange. It's one thing to have a book in your hand, but an audiobook, I'm still old school. Remember, I'm in my 70s, so we didn't even have audiobooks. So it was a strange thing to actually hear this being read out.
And was it a challenging process for you to find just the right voice for it that you were looking for?
I'll tell you the truth. They sent me 5 different readers, and I listened to them. And my daughter is an actress. And so I said, what do you think? Which one should I pick? She picked one. And I said, okay, that's not who I would have picked. I'll ask some of my other friends. I have nurses. I asked them. They all picked the same man. So I said, okay, I guess that's what I needed to go with. And he actually turned out to be wonderful. He was so good. I'm so glad they picked him.
I think we talked about this the first time, but you have the golden spiral on the cover, and I think that's really important. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, it comes down to the Fibonacci series. It would take a little while to talk about that, but there's a chapter about that. The golden spiral it's a mathematical construct, but we find it in nature so much. And the chapter that I have in the book tells about that, but it's in flowers, it's in your human body. So it really is an item that's fascinating.
It's even found in old architecture and works of art, like over the centuries.
It is. There's a number of paintings and painters. So Leonardo da Vinci and Van Gogh and Piet Mondrian and a number of them have used this. I assume not necessarily intentionally, but just subliminally. But it comes out in our art. It comes out in nature.
Well, this is definitely a fascinating book. Again, it's titled God's Human Biology, written by Wiley Livingston Jr., MD, and published by the Audiobook Network. So head on over to places where you usually pick up your audiobooks, and you're going to find it, like Audible, iTunes, and Amazon. Wiley, it's been wonderful talking again. Thanks again for coming on the show.
A delight. And I say that to all your listeners also, that I hope you get a chance to experience it.
Fiery Furnace is the new book by Leon Dockery, and this is a stirring, true-to-life reflection on faith, family, and perseverance amid systemic injustice. Leon is sitting right here with me now at the show, and we're going to be talking all about it. Leon, welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Glad to be here. Glad to be here.
Leon, can you tell me what you've written about in Fiery Furnace?
Fiery Furnace is kind of like, it's a documentation of some things that my brother and I have been going through within the real estate community in New York. It's a testimony to a struggle the family has been through and still going through. And I thought that it was good that people should know about this, because others are probably feeling the pressure of this kind of a thing also. So that's the gist of what the book is about. It's about us going through the court system and having to deal with things that we should not have had to deal with.
Leon, what kind of a reading audience did you have in mind for this?
Particularly those of us in the communities who probably struggling with foreclosures, this thing that they call gentrification, which I think is a farce, is just developers trying to push through to get real estate in their hands by some notion of a market called gentrification. So these people, particularly in the northern area, were forced out of their houses, their homes, at the notion of not being able to pay their mortgage and forced to go upstate somewhere, or either landlords would come by and say, well, listen, your rent's going to be raised. You were paying maybe $800. Now you're paying $1,600, and you can't afford to stay. So they appropriate another place for you to go to, close you out, take the building, they go on and refinance it, reconstruct it, and put it on the market as gentrification.
What was your inspiration to write this, Leon?
Well, inspiration is that's what it was. It's a family concern. It was a family concern that had mitigated into the community, and knowing that others in the community were also involved in this, I thought it was necessary that we do this. And this book, by the way, is a documentary of an organization that we call Ajax that had to be formed to give us some kind of a platform to speak from and to act on. So, yes, that was kind of like the inspiration. It just had to be told.
What does your writing background look like, Leon? Do you have experience doing this kind of thing?
Well, surprisingly, there's a thing that's called passion, and there's a thing that's called purpose. Well, I've got some writing experiences. I've written some other things, and you've got me penned as Leon Dockery. I have another pen that's LD Dockery. But the Christian fiction, as I call it, I don't like to call it Christian fiction. It's not really fiction. It's more or less memory fiction, from where I can talk about my background, my Christian experience, and how I apply it in everyday life in terms of faith and pressing on with conflicts that come up in everyday life and in community life and family life. And this is what this book is about.
Was this a long journey for you overall, the writing and publishing and everything?
For me, it's been kind of like a starting thing from my mother. I think you had something about the background, and she being a writer herself. And going back to the passion thing, I really, in the children's stories, it may seem strange, but that's a passion. The purpose, I think, my purpose is to write Christian fiction, and that's what I'm doing. And I have other things coming forth, hopefully, that will be in the same genre.
So you had your manuscript ready. You started working with your publisher, Christian Faith. What did you find to be the most challenging part about that publishing end of things for you?
Well, Christian Faith is very good. They've been very good to me. The notion was that, I had this manuscript ready. I didn't know which way to go to get it out there. And so I said, well, it has a Christian background, so let me try Christian Faith. And that's what I did. And they were very good at taking the manuscript, sitting down with it, editing it, giving me suggestions and things like that right there. And you were in the circle because they invited you in, I suppose. So they were good, and they have inspired me to perhaps write another one.
Leon's book is titled Fiery Furnace, again written by Leon Dockery and published by Christian Faith Publishing. Pick it up at places like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, and traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Leon, it's been wonderful talking with you tonight. Thank you so much again for coming on the show.
Appreciate coming on.
Author Shannon M. Hastings has written a new book titled From Broken Pieces to a Beautiful Masterpiece. We get to talk all about it right now here at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. Shannon is sitting here with me. Shannon, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Shannon, can you tell me about what you've written in From Broken Pieces to a Beautiful Masterpiece?
Yes, so From Broken Pieces to a Beautiful Masterpiece, it is a book about my life, but I didn't write it to be a tell-all about my pain or just about what happened to Shannon. And I also didn't write it as a self-help manual either. I wrote it to meet readers wherever they are in their journey. Like, life can truly suck at times. It can feel very unfair, isolating, and heavy. So I wanted readers to actually feel the real moments, the grief, the confusion, the silence, the pain, and not just necessarily hear about it from a distance. And then throughout all that honesty, I wanted readers to see that life does have a way of turning around, even when you think that you won't be able to survive it. So it's mainly a story of how broken pieces still have the ability to become a true masterpiece.
That's a great story, Shannon. How are you inspired to write this?
So honestly, my biggest inspiration was my mother. Losing my mom at 14 to breast cancer really had a huge impact on my life in obviously negative ways, but also positive ways as well. But there was also, I went to this event. I'm a nurse. I went to this event once, and it was this nurse that I met there. And she really drilled into me, your story is one that needs to be told. It really does need to be told. It can help so many people. And it was kind of at that moment and then beyond that I was like, maybe it is time for me to kind of just speak up and just share everything that I had went through and let it help whoever had the ability to help.
Are you experienced in writing and publishing, or is this kind of a new thing for you?
No, so this is completely my first published book. Becoming an author wasn't something that I was just I want to be an author. The book is actually written from journal pages. So since 14, I have been just journaling a lot of everything that I went through. And I think that part for me makes it incredibly meaningful because these words have lived in my journal long before they lived in print. So I've always written. It just was a private source of writing, and writing was my outlet. So for the first time, I allowed these pages to kind of be seen publicly.
So from the time when you decided to get started on this, clear up through the publishing process and everything, was this a long journey for you overall?
Emotionally, yes. It was an extremely long journey emotionally, but physically, it did not take long to actually just write it because, again, I pulled from journal entries. I pulled from memories. A lot of it was so fresh in my mind when I reread the journal entries, even though it was stuff that I had buried within deep. So emotionally, yes, I want to say it took years to come to the point of being able to be open about some of the stuff that I went through because a lot of it is very, very raw and just real stuff and stuff that, you kind of in your mind want nobody to know. But once I started writing and once I started kind of putting it together, from that point, it just kind of rolled out. It was how can I take everything that I went through and be honest with it and be open with it, but make sure that people see kind of the light at the end of the tunnel.
The publishing process can be quite an experience, especially for new authors. So once you started working with your publisher, Christian Faith, Shannon, what was the most challenging part about that publishing end of things for you?
The most challenging part for me, I would say, has to be the timeline. I think throughout the entire publishing part, the part that took the longest for me was the editing. I think that largely had to do with what the story was about. So it was okay, I wrote the manuscript, I sent it, they sent it back with, some editing suggestions, which it wasn't a lot. But whenever someone edits something that's so personal like this, you want to reread it again from, top to bottom to make sure that it's still flowing. So it almost was so much of the story I had to keep reliving and rereading and reliving and rereading. So that editing part was very, very tough on me because some days I just emotionally and mentally could not handle it. It was I can't reread this chapter today, even though that I know that I need to reread it to get it back to them in a certain time. And so you have this in the back of your mind, that you want to stay on this timeline because
You want to get the book done and get it published, and you're working with, the other people that's waiting on the other end to get it back from you. And you kind of want to keep things going, but you also want it to be done right.
Shannon's book is titled From Broken Pieces to a Beautiful Masterpiece. Again, written by Shannon M. Hastings and published by Christian Faith Publishing. Pick it up at places like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, and right down the street at your local bookshop. Shannon, thank you again for coming on the show. It's been great to learn about your story and your work.
Thank you.
The new book by Widz Stoops is titled Kalilana, and this is a retelling of an Indonesian folktale that follows one man's search for his identity so he can live meaningfully. The author Widz is joining me right now here at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, and I can't wait to talk all about this book. Widz, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Can you tell me what readers are going to get into whenever they open up Kalilana?
Kalilana is actually the book. It's a love story full of controversy and tragedy, but also full of philosophy of life. I actually adapted this story from one of many ancient Indonesian folk tales that was often told by my mom and my dad, when I was a kid. The reason why I picked this particular folk tale, because not just the story is very old, I think it's around 1000 before Christ, but also there is a uniqueness about this story. What I mean by that is this amazing story is merely fiction, but firmly supported by geological facts. The story precisely mirrors the chronology of the series of natural disasters that happened in Indonesia back then. So think about this. 1000 before Christ, right? The technology was not there. People back then probably do not know the word of technology. They don't even know what technology is, right? And this series of natural disasters happened, and our ancestors, they feel like they need to tell their generation of what happened. Now, since there was no technology, so there is no scientific way to explain, so they have to be creative to come up with the story that can explain it on how or why this natural disaster happened in a simple way so that the generation back then understand. But let me tell you this. In the era of 1500, there was a lecturer, and he was also a traveler, who happened to stop by in the area where this folk tale from. And he heard about this story from the locals. He was very interested, and he wrote it down in his diary. His diary was not made of paper. It made of some type of like a palm leaf. So he wrote down in that palm leaves, right? 100 years later, I think it's around 1600 something, a British man found his palm manuscript, and he took it back to England. And it was so interested, so they kept it in Bodleian Library. Back then, Bodleian Library was, one of the big library in Oxford, England. And you know what? That story that was written in the palm leaves that was gathered from the locals finally became a source of knowledge for geologists to do a research on this series of natural disasters. You know why? Because that story is full of knowledge, and the story actually mimics of what exactly happened, with this series of natural disasters. So I think when you think about it, our ancestor is very smart, They want to tell you what really happened, but there was no scientific, there was no technology. So here they are. They come up with this folktale, and they mimic with that natural disasters that happened back then.
This book is titled Kalilana. It's written by Widz Stoops and published by Newman Springs Publishing. So you can find it at places like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, and traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Widz, thank you again for coming on the show. It was really great to talk with you tonight.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you.
I'm delighted to be sitting here right now with author Alfred Pleasure here at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. Alfred, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, sir. I do appreciate the opportunity to be sitting here in this interview. Thank you.
I appreciate your time, Alfred, and you have a new book out titled Is God Enough? Can you tell me about what you've written here?
I look out over the landscape of our communities and our society, and oftentimes I work in healthcare. I'm a registered nurse, and oftentimes I see people at different stages of life, at the beginning, at the end, and oftentimes you hear these questions of, have I done enough? And is there more to this life? And for me, in order to be able to truly answer that question, you have to start with who is God? And you have to be able to start with, is God enough, first of all, before I can determine if I am enough?
What kind of a reading audience, Alfred, did you have in mind for this?
So my book really is for anyone over the age of 8 years old who can read. Honestly, it's filled with many different parables, analogies, and easy-to-read examples and correlations that people can grasp the concept of who God is in ordinary, everyday life.
So what was that spark, that inspiration that made you say, hey, I got to write this book?
Honestly, it really boiled down to just looking at my own life and trying to find a way to be able to reach people beyond the conventional means. And there's tons of literature out there when it comes to the Bible, God, and people writing these awesome and wonderful texts on theology. And I just thought I could bring something a little bit simpler to the table for the everyday reader, that you don't necessarily need a theology degree or need to be well educated to be able to follow along in the book.
Alfred, what does your writing background look like? Is this a new thing for you?
I would say, yes, it is a new thing for me. I'm more of a speaker than I am a writer, and I periodically would take notes and write things down. And it just became a thing for me that I started writing down a lot more of my thoughts than I have done in the past. So this is something that I look forward to doing, and prayerfully I'll be able to have more to come.
Was this a long process for you overall, the writing and publishing and everything?
It was. So from start to finish, although the book isn't very long, it took me probably about a good 5 months to gather all of my thoughts, put them together. Of course, this is my first book that I've ever written, so obviously the jitters, the nerves, and what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. And then from the time I began writing to the time the book actually entered into publication was just a little bit over a year, about 13 months.
And the publishing process can be very daunting to a lot of new authors. What did you find the most challenging part about that end of things for you?
Honestly, just the unknown. The unknown of not knowing the time frame, or not knowing, okay, how exactly does this work? Is my book going to really be in a place where people can see it? How well is it going to be marketed?
I could only imagine then what you were thinking whenever it was finally a real thing. You had Is God Enough in your hands for the first time, Alfred. What was that moment like for you?
Honestly, I'm still kind of struck at it. Again, not something I dreamed of, imagined, or even really set out to really pursue. And as I look at it, it's just a feeling of awe, a feeling of gratefulness, a feeling of the opportunity to hopefully be able to reach people and be able to do what I believe I've been put on this earth to do, which is to enlarge the kingdom of God and to spread the good news about God and about Jesus Christ.
You mentioned that you hope to get more out there. So is there more that you have kind of going around your head?
There is more that I have going around my head. So when I originally wrote this book, as I started to come to the conclusion of it, I realized that there were other questions and there were other thoughts that I had in mind. So I'm looking to entitle this as a series, Is God? And the next book I'm looking to write, Is God Relevant? So using Is God as the series and just answering series of questions that come after that.
A lot of our listeners are authors who are also just starting out. Alfred, do you have maybe some advice that you could offer to them?
Stick in there. Don't give up. Don't quit. When it seems like you're just stuck, take a step back, regather your thoughts. But at the end of the day, keep plowing forward. You'll get to the point eventually where you'll have a completed product in your hand.
Well, this is definitely a wonderful book. Again, it's titled, Is God Enough? It's written by Alfred Pleasure, published by Newman Springs Publishing, and available pretty much everywhere, like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, and traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Alfred, it's been wonderful talking with you today. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much. I do appreciate your time, and take care, and God bless.
We hope you enjoyed this edition of the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. Check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, just to name a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where independent new authors come first.